Welcome back to Pairswold Knitting. I'm Jennifer, and this is my 4th episode of Pairswold Knitting. This is a knitting podcast all about knitting, yarny goodness, and travel while I take a year of sabbatical. In this episode, I'm going to feature all of my yarny adventures while we travel throughout Nova Scotia. There just seemed to be so much great experience and content that I'm dividing up the episodes into between a part 1 and part 2 of Nova Scotia in this beautiful country of ours of Canada. We had just traveled up from Maine, and so getting into some of the Canadian goodness. This episode will be divided up into finished objects, presenting what I was able to cast on and complete while we were away on a road trip, into then some whips, works in progress, into some of the traveling that we were able to do with the experiences that we had while we were away in this part of Nova Scotia, and then into the acquisitions that were acquired during this time. And we just had such a beautiful, lovely time. I feel glowing after such a beautiful trip away. So let's do it. We're gonna start with what I'm wearing, and I'll insert a video here. This is the Badger and Bloom by Ventzel. This pattern is one that I had wanted to start 2 years ago while we went down to Mexico, and I originally planned the sweater in the prescribed, recommended yarn, which was the CaMaRose Sneufnug, and I picked colors that were very similar to her original sweater, which was a black, and this one was a shade darker in a deep beige. They all have, the wording is in a Scandinavian language, and of course it's hidden by the ball band. But there we go. This is actually not what I used at all. I had started in Mexico. This was going to be my very first colorwork sweater. I had knit up the yoke, and we'll see if I insert pictures here. It just turned out to be huge. I ended up knitting the colorwork for my first time after reading a lot about stranded colorwork, and I started really pulling or separating out the stitches on my right hand needle, thinking that it might be too tight. In the end, the yoke was ginormous, and I think it would have been almost unwearable for something that I had wanted and the fit I wanted. So I pulled it out, set the pattern aside for like a year or more, and then I was at a local yarn shop, my very favorite in Toronto, very top of Toronto, called the Knitting Loft, and I picked out just fun colors that spoke to me at the time, very like bubblegummy and a little 80s vibe. Just listened to Wham before this video and got super jazzed about it all. And so picking out these colors really inspired me to retry and reknit the pattern. Now Ventzel has another version of her Badgers in Bloom that's a little louder. So I kind of went off that idea of like just having fun with it. And I totally did. So the colors I chose literally were colors that I saw on the shelf, like lined up in, various orders. And I just picked the ones that seemed fun. They didn't even go together. I mean, this kind of, limey green and then the aqua, complete miss. But I think just because it's such a silly, loud knit, I enjoy wearing it, and it's actually one of the few sweaters I brought with me while we were away down east. And I find it goes with a lot of things because I have neutral bottoms. So like my white linen pants that I'm wearing, I wear it with jeans, I wear it with like a plain skirt, and it's a fun piece. It's pretty warm. So for those of you that do know the CaMaRose Sneufnug, I think it means cloud. It is a cloud. It is just this ridiculously puffy, cloudy yarn. It's an interesting mix, and again, first time not only with color work but knitting with something like this and the recommended yarn. It's a combo of alpaca, I believe some kind of wool, and a cotton. It was it was a joy to knit. And I really think not only was it a fantastic first color work pattern for stranded color work, because you're doing like 1 by 1 colors, rotating like color A, B, A, B, A, B. There's no long floats, but it was surely a delight coming up with the new color that would be the next chunk of the pattern sequence. And again, because it's knit on such a big chunky needle, it flew pretty much. And I know, you know, we live in a world of making our own things, making our own clothes, making our own wardrobes, which I wear every day and love. So I do think there's a lot of joy from the slowness, the slow fashion that goes, but I have to say the gratification that happens when you are using bigger needles is kind of nice, especially when you're working on another project that's a little slower and more involved. So this was super fun. I knit this in the smallest size as usual, just because, again, I'm such a big knitter, loose knitter, and this was knit on a US 8. I realized in my other videos I wasn't including the needle size, so I don't know if that's required for information, but there we are. And yeah, it was great. I did a US 7 on the ribbing. Again, I don't know really what was recommended on the ribbing, but I do recall like a US 10. So to give you an idea, I'm usually knitting like a needle 2 sizes down, sometimes more. So that's a pattern bloom. There we are. So getting into the finished objects. So my first finished object technically was done while I filmed my last video. My last video I actually filmed in Lunenburg. I feel like I should even get into that story right now before I get into my finished objects. So we were in Lunenburg at a time when it was rainy. We've had a lot of rainy weather this season, which, you know, I'm not the weather girl. I feel not needed to talk about the weather. However, in this case, I will share that in Lunenburg, they were calling for storms all day. And this is in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia. Beautiful, beautiful area that I'll be talking about in my future video for Nova Scotia in the part 2 component. And we thought, okay, rain, we deal with rain. Everywhere deals with rain, no big deal. This actually was a big deal. It rained all through the day. And I'm not talking like a little sprinkle, like the tap turned on and water fell from the sky, just buckets and buckets of water. We even drove out to dinner, which felt very naughty because I'm a city girl. I like walking everywhere. Lunenburg's very walkable. And we had to drive to dinner because it was downpouring. It was lightning and thunder, and I'm talking all day. I've never witnessed anything like this. It went into the night. Every time I think, you know, there were loud noises from the storm, I kind of stirred and turned and I thought, this still can't be going on. It was crazy. It turns out, sadly, it did create a lot of flooding. It washed out roads and bridges. It was horrible for the poor people. I'm going to share a little further in my next episode of, I think, the repercussions of that horrible storm. And I know Nova Scotia's gone through so many things with the wildfires. So it was a challenging time for the locals, and my heart does go out to these people. While the storm was going on, I don't know if you noticed, but there were jeans in the background drying. That is because I forgot yarn in the car that I had to get for the video and try to hustle out, thank goodness I'm a runner, to the car to get in the pouring rain. So it was an interesting time. Back to the finished objects, I had finished my loose sweater. And of course, I'll insert some footage here of the loose sweater, which is just beautiful and bright and crisp looking. This sweater was actually done, which you may have noticed in a little clip I put in. I think it was a photo of at the Lobster Shack in Maine, at the McLoon's Lobster Shack. I was very excited to wear it because I just cast off in the car as we were pulling up to the Lobster Shack. However, I hadn't blocked it. And because it was so rainy while we were away, I didn't block it because I was afraid it wouldn't dry properly. So let's get into the loose sweater. The Lou sweater is a pattern design from this book, which you have seen me with, from the Sandnes Garn Stuff for Women. This was a very simple raglan sweater that was designed with all one color and a split hem. It's a really lovely pattern to follow, fairly mindless. A lot of it was knit in the car for me because of the road trip. Some of the interesting details on it is the actual raglan. So you'll see that there's two separate stitch areas of the raglan with some purls in between and picking up stitches for increases of the raglan yoke. And I feel like I love always that the ribbing, this is, I think it's a 2x2, it flows down into those raglan stripes almost, and it's just like I love that it continues. It does something, I think, to the eye where it pulls it down and it just makes it like extra crisp and finished. I feel the color, which I haven't even talked about the yarn. This is the Harrisville design Highland wool. I used two cones actually, and the color is Azure. I bought this while on vacation in tropical paradise and was super influenced by the gorgeous blue ocean. This to me is the memories of the purchase of the yarn when I did an online purchase, and I feel like it just screams ocean. I have purchased this with the thought of wearing it with my wet linen pants in the video, paired it, and it's just great. I also mentioned in the last episode that I just knit because, again, I'm in the car, I'm just going and not referring to the pattern every 5 seconds, that I had totally missed the separate hem, the split hem. I ripped it out, I redid a split hem. This one isn't as dramatic as recommended or is in the pattern. I believe this is the back part. This is supposed to be slightly even longer than the front. But I kept it more or less at the same length, and it really gives like a nice fit, like a nice drape over the back side, if you will. So that's great. I did leave my back yarn. This was my original cast on, because I'm kind of debating what to do with the neck. Now the neck, they did a rolled hem, I believe. Now I've lost my page, but I believe it's, or not a rolled hem, sorry, a folded hem. I cast on this amount thinking I'd fold it. I haven't got there yet. I don't know if I'm gonna fold it or actually pick up stitches and knit it even longer to make like a nice chunky, like mock neck, turtleneck. And I do have yarn left over, so we'll see. I mean, I say these things, do I ever touch them again? Usually not, but we'll see. So this took two cones of the Harrisville design Highland. It says it's 450 yards at 228 grams, 8 ounces. I mean, 2 sweaters. So the cost of this guy, and I bought this from Unit Toronto, which is another fantastic Toronto yarn store. I bought it on a sale day. They have tons of sales all the time that are like 20% off. And they still have these cones. And they're like, at the time it was under $30 each. It was like 20, I have the little price, $28.50. They might have gone up since. But to get a sweater for this much, this inexpensive, I feel is fantastic. And it's such a gorgeous yarn. Again, on the cones, these are a little more, what's the word? Like constricted because of maybe the spinning oils. It hasn't been properly washed, I think, like hanks or skeins have. So there is a lovely blooming factor that happens. With the loose sweater, I knit the smallest size in this, and I knit it on a US 5, which is quite a bit smaller than the recommended. I ribbed in the 4. There we go, smaller needles, beautiful sweater, and she's gotten a lot of wear. That's the loose sweater by Sandnes Garn. I'm gonna chuck it over there. Okay, next up is the Felix Pullover. I'll insert a video here. The Felix Pullover is a sweater designed by Savory Knitting, or Amy Christoffers is her name of the designer. And this is a very simple, chunkier sweater with raglan stitches that are, instead of just increases, like lifted increases or make one left, make one right, these are eyelet stitches with yarn overs that are done in sequences of V's or chevrons that happen one on top of the other. So hopefully in the video you'll be able to see that the chevrons create this really beautiful design. And of course my video is not super great at showing this, but it's a real basic sweater with beautiful structure to it, and adds such like an area of interest with the eyelet stitches that are prepared for the increases at the raglan. It's very feminine, and yet still like quite a robust sweater. It's such a great mix that I really enjoy. With this, I knit the size 2. The yarn I used is a yarn that I've become slightly obsessed with. This is the Dornyard yarn that I purchased in Maine that was in my last video. This is a skein, I balled it up. It is a crazy amount of sheepy goodness and heaps of spinning oils in it, like mega grease, where I'd wash my hands after. I will show a photo of when I was blocking the sweater. I waited for home to block my sweater, and I think it like dropped like 2 pounds while I washed it. I dunked it, and the second I was dunking it in my wool wash, you could see elements of what was still in the yarn coming out that created a very murky water. I gave it 3 different soaks with water and wool wash, and it feels much lighter. It's really bloomed, the yarn. It's got a really lovely, and it's hard to see, variegation. So this is in the natural black. This was taken from a black sheep, which I'm loving, even though I'm wearing like this crazy 80s, you know, loud yarn and commercial. This is everything on the other end of the spectrum to me. Very natural, very untreated, and it was just great to work with. I enjoyed it so much. I'm gonna share what else I purchased. So there we go. I don't think I did really any mods. I followed the size 2. The needles, of course, I used were less. They were a US 8 and ribbed on a 6. I think the pattern calls again for a 10, so a pretty chunky knit. And yeah, that's it. It's got really simple shaping on the sleeve, and I don't mind shaping on the sleeve. Some people are like all about, you know, keeping it simple all the way down. I just track it, which I'm sure many people do, with little like pins, or even like I shared before, like the safety pins, and just clip them on. I think there's just, you know, a slight amount of decreases is no big deal, and it gives a really beautiful little arm that is super flattering, I feel, for my body type. To Felix, it's gonna get heaps of wear, and I feel like this dark knit is becoming a thing. Like, I feel like I'm slightly ahead of the curve, where I've been seeing on Instagram like dark, deep knits coming out, like dark grays, blacks. Hello, we're there, and I love it. It'll be a classic wear. That's a Felix sweater by Savory Knitting. The next finished object, I'm not gonna fully share. She's not blocked, it's fine, but I'm just gonna do a little peep so you're not like, hey, Jennifer, where is that last thing? So I'll just do a little this. This is my Snowy Forest sweater by Harrisville. It has not been blocked. I've added some things to it, like short road shaping, where the fit right now is bubbly on the back. So I'm like, no, she needs to be properly bathed and let to dry she will get her full showcase and fashion show in the next episode. But I wanted to share, she's there, don't worry, super fun. She'll be shared next time. Going into now, I think we're gonna talk about the whips. So works in progress. My works in progress, I have felt so inspired. I mean, it's summer. I feel very energetic with the summer in general, the warmer weather. As I'm talking about warmer, holy cow, man. It's a little warm in the brushed alpaca, right? And just the colors, being outside, seeing color again. I mean, where I live in Canada, in Toronto, downtown, our colors are white and glass. White is coming from, well, white, that's an overstatement. The dirty sidewalks, black from the pavement, and glass into a million other people's condos. This is where I live, which is great. Tons of great things around. Not a lot of color for me, not a lot of inspiration. So I feel like getting out of the city and getting into nature, seeing color, being around plants and flowers and animals, I was like, oh. So I cast on things, hence some of the finished objects you've seen. One of my objects is this. So this is kind of backwards that I'm doing, because this yarn will not be shared in this episode, but in the next. But I mean, I had a cast on. So this is the beginnings of the field sweater. The field sweater is a new design by Camilla Vad, and obviously has just hit the charts of how popular it's been. She did such an incredible job, I think, presenting it even before the pattern came out, and it just gave it the best hype. I feel worthy hype for what the sweater is. It's a gorgeous texture, knit top down, with a grain, she calls it a grain yoke, and it's fantastic. It's so beautiful. It's been really fun to knit on. Don't kid yourself, this is not one that you can, you know, hang out, chat to your friends and knit along. This is a thinking piece. I find there are definitely rows I'm getting to now where I'm like, totally cool, I can still chat and have somewhat half of a conversation with someone that I'm around, but in general, I have to have my phone out with the pattern open and knit along to what's going on. There's a lot of almost like cable-like stitches that are happening with stitches that go in the back or the front on a cable needle. I'm not using a needle, I'm using just like a pinching technique that I'm sure many of us do. So it's been great. This yarn is a yarn that I purchased in the next, in the future episode, back through the States. This is sheer, and it's a sheer delight. I can tell you. I learned about woolen spun, worsted spun, and we'll get into that later in another episode. This is a woolen spun, and I've never knit with anything as light. It's an air. The entire skein is 50 grams. It's DK weight, and it is still how many? 196 yards. Like, hello, she's a cloud. And I feel, I said this on my Instagram post when I posted a little bit of the yoke. I feel like I'm a knitting ballerina. I'm going through and I'm just like, do-do-do, pirouette, do-do-do, you know, turn. It's making me feel like a ballerina, a knitting ballerina, and I'm loving it. So that's a field sweater. We'll see how much progress happens, but I'm in no rush to finish because I'm enjoying it so much. And that is with the sheer yarn that I can't wait to talk about next time. My next cast on, technically, and whip, is one of two socks. So the love of my life, he is extremely knit worthy, but I have adhered by the sweater curse. So, and we'll talk about the sweater curse in a second, you'll see why. This is a sock where it's a DK sock. He has a couple of other socks that I knit for him and wears them, which is so nice to see, because I feel like with my other gifted knits, I don't always know if they get worn, which I guess is okay for some people, and they're like happy knowing that it's gone to a good home and they're assuming that it's getting worn or not, and it's fine with them. Like, I want to see it get worn. I wear my stuff all the time, and it makes me curious. With him, I'm able to see if he's wearing it, if he enjoys it. And so I knit him silly socks. So this is one of the silly socks. DK weight, this is in a Color Lab DK by West Yorkshire Spinners. Just a simple, like, you know, off the shelf kind of thing I bought at Romney Wool in Toronto. And it was just fun. I cast it on last week as a little like grab and go transit knit since we've been back in Toronto, and finished it in no time. Like, it's a DK sock. I don't knit fingering socks because I feel like I don't have the patience, and you know, they're a little fiddly for me. This is as fiddly as I'm gonna get. It's a pattern that I followed from Crazy Sock Lady for her vanilla DK socks. I've knit it a number of times, and it's great. You can make it what you want it. This is just in a color changing yarn. I literally did nothing except knit and just enjoy. So that is one. Two will come. And the idea is, of course, that I'm gonna block them and put them away for Christmas or a birthday or something, but we'll see. I mean, time is early. It's not even near December yet. So those are the vanilla DK socks by Crazy Sock Lady. There we are, for the love of my life. My next finished object, yes, this is what I'll talk about. This is my next cast on. This is in my dreamy yarn of the Dorn yarns that I purchased from the Cashmere Goat in Maine, in Camden. I ended up, when we were going back through the US to get home, because there's really like two options when we're going back from where we were in New Brunswick then, is you go through Quebec, which is great. We've done it before, it's beautiful, or go back through the States. And we went through the US for a few reasons. One was to pick up the Dornyard yarn that I purchased. I purchased online for pickup. We knew we were going down already for some other things, and just picked up at the door. I think I got the rest of what they had of this sheep's black. I got 7 more balls. I had a little left from my Felix. I used just under 4 for that. And I've cast on a sweater for my love. We're breaking the sweater curse. Here we go. Sweater curse, if you haven't heard of this, is when somebody knits their love, their partner, their husband, their wife, their girlfriend, their boyfriend a sweater, and then they gift their beautiful sweater of all their time and effort and love and creative juices, and then the relationship sours. There's a breakup, there's a separation. It's a sweater curse. I've heard other sides of the sweater curse. This is the one I know, so I have been weary to prepare and create a sweater for the love of my life, even though he is very knit-worthy, and socks have always been the venue that I've taken to show him my knitting love. But when I was knitting the Felix in this yarn, there were endless comments about how great it looked, how he liked the feel, all the positive comments. Oh, I really like that sweater, he said. And I'm like, all right, is this the time? Is this the time that I branch out? We tried to deal and get over this silly mythical sweater curse. Oh, it's making me hot. Maybe the sweater is, maybe the sweater curse. So I decided we're gonna do it. We're taking a risk. We're getting a little risky, getting out of the comfort zone here. So here's what I did. I'm not following a pattern. of course. Why? It's my first time making a big dude pattern, but you know, let's just wing it. So that's what we're doing. So I've cast on 80 something stitches, measured the neck. I think it's gonna work. And this, I am doing a raglan style, like knit top down sweater. I'm doing two, I don't know if you can see anything here, probably not. 2 stitches as the raglan, and I'm doing, what are they called? Lifted increases. I'm doing lifted increases on the sides of the raglan. I feel like 2 things. The 2-stitch raglan instead of a 1, which is more traditional, I believe, will give more structure and be more like masculine. The lifted increases will reduce the holes almost that form when you're doing an increase, like a make one a make one right, make one left, which for me creates a little bit of a hole. So I wanted to reduce the gap. We're gonna see. I've added short rows to this by just following like common sense short row shaping. I'm doing for short rows, I do a wrap and turn, I think it's called. So that's what I've used on this. I have no idea. We're gonna see. It's my first time ever making a sweater outside of myself or my mom or another female that's been relatively like my shape, my size. And we'll see. I'm really excited. This is not going to be a surprise, nor is the sock, because I'm home and I'm knitting. He saw the sock. He's excited about the sock. We've conferenced about the sweater. He's got measurements. Great team member. I'm really excited. So this is the very first sweater in my world to break the sweater curse, and I'm excited about it. Oh my goodness. It was so hot. Well, I took a moment to go find the other kit of the embroidery kit that I purchased. I had to change. I had to. I was so hot. I mean, you may think this is blush. This is from being hot. So back to finished object. This is the blueberry ornament that I purchased a kit from a market. It was the Arts and Book Fair of Camden at the Camden Public Library. Heaps of makers, local makers from Maine. This is purchased from the Eternal Knot. They do have a website. She doesn't have social media from what I saw, but super fantastic. It was my first time embroidering 3 different stitches and just had a fun, silly time doing this outside of knitting, but still crafting and making, followed with a glass of wine. What fun. If you are if you are an embroiderer, I'm sure you are seeing some newbie issues, but it was good. I had a good time. That's what's all about, having a good time. So that is the embroidery kit from Eternal Knots, or Eternal Knotta, not plural, sorry, only one knot. We are going to now, yes, that's it for my whips. Let's talk about the trip. So I'll be inserting photos and videos here, but I think I'm going to discuss the adventures that we had. For our road trip down east, we had driven through already, as in my last episode, through New York, Vermont, and Maine. Our last stop was Bar Harbor, Maine, where we caught a ferry, and the ferry went from Bar Harbor to Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. It's a 3.5 ferry ride from basically point to point. Huge ferry, you bring your car on, and it was the biggest ferry that I've ever been on. Brought all my knitting up from the car because you can't go back down to your car to get any knitting items you may have forgotten, so be prepared with your knitting. And yeah, we ventured over the ocean for 3 hours up to Nova Scotia. It was great. We stayed in a Airbnb for the first time. that was just beautiful, that was in Terrence Bay. So Terrence Bay is about half an hour drive from Halifax, middle of nowhere and lush and green at the ocean. It was the best. And what a stark difference from downtown Toronto. It was tops of our stay. The Airbnb was beautiful, and all of the relaxing I think we were able to do, and quality time spent with each other was a delight. We went to Peggy's Cove, on which was a fairly rainy day. Rain kind of was a theme that we had once we hit Nova Scotia, which was fine. Because I feel like we managed to kind of, you know, weave our activities around it or relax during the rain, which was lovely. And we had lunch at a restaurant as the rain was coming to a close. The roads were very wet, and we ventured back through Peggy's Cove to Terrence Bay. We decided, let's give Peggy's Cove a whirl. I had driven out east with my sister years ago, and we did go to Peggy's Cove, and I remember my memory was that it was packed. It was packed with people, and this time was a very different experience. So we got to Peggy's Cove. Mind you, it's pretty misty out. It just finished downpouring, and there was no one there. We went into the parking lot. We parked right up at the front where, you know, it meets Peggy's Cove's rocks, and it was amazing. It was like we had Peggy's Cove to ourselves. I mean, you'll see in the pictures, it was very misty. You couldn't see for long distances, but we got to enjoy our time with each other at Peggy's Cove, with the lighthouse, with the beautiful rock formations. And we spent quite some time there. I'd say like a good hour and a half, walking around, enjoying the scenery, being careful of the rock because obviously they're wet. And they say that the closer you go to the water, of course, the more dangerous. The black rock do not go on. So we were careful, you know, we were good Canadians, and we had a marvelous time. It was really lovely. I feel, you know, I just hope the pictures are able, or the videos are able to show the beauty of the landscape of Peggy's Cove. So hopefully if you do get a chance to go, maybe consider going on a rainy, kind of dreary day, because I feel we really enjoyed our time there with less people. We then did some beautiful walking. So in Terrence Bay and the surrounding areas, there's trails everywhere, and even if you don't do the trails in particular, there's still like lovely side roads that you can do. We walked some of the High Head Trail. We walked through Prospect, which are small. We went as well with beautiful walks that we did around lighthouses, and of course I have such an affinity for ocean and for lighthouses. We went to farmers markets. So the farmers markets in Nova Scotia are extremely popular. On the main site, if you search in Google, Farmers Markets Nova Scotia, the first website is one that is the general website where you can look at a map, see where you are, and find out if there's a local market that's going on where you are and what day it happens. So it seems like in the Halifax-ish area, there's a market that happens almost every day. We were lucky enough to go to the Tantalin Village Market, Farmers Market. That was my favorite one while we were there. It was a little bigger than some that we had done, and had beautiful produce. The friendliest people are everywhere. Baked goods. There was a girl with a friend there who no older than like 8 or 9 years old, selling homemade cookies. And just again, this like small town feel of You've got your neighborhood neighbor selling cookies. It was just adorable. I know, it sounding so cliche. So of course I bought cookies from her. It was lovely. That the farmers markets were beautiful with lovely people and super fun. We had only a few dinners out or experiences eating out of the Airbnb. It was a time that I felt like we could actually prepare food for ourselves because we had a full kitchen, which was really nice, and we've never had on vacation before. So really tried to prepare our own meals. But one notable dinner we had was at Shaw's Landing. That is just outside of Terrence Bay, and it's a lobster shack. Again, we had a mix of lobster and scallop. They're the best. I mean, succulent, sweet. The mignonette dressing that they made at this lobster shack, I had no expectation for, was fantastic. You can make reservations. We didn't have one, and we sat down. Server was lovely. They have yummy little beer on tap. They have wine. They had a local craft in-house beer that was our favorite. It was called the Crew Brew at Shaw's Landing, and it was so much fun with the seafood. It was great, Shaw's Landing. We had gone into Halifax a couple of times. Not many, we didn't need to, but we did do our grocery shopping there. And we went to this one cafe that was called Espresso 46. Didn't really know what to expect, had incredibly high ratings. And, you know, I come from the city. We have good coffee here in Toronto and steps away from where I live. I was not prepared for Espresso 46. We showed up on a Saturday and there were two lines that stretched from the window of the cafe, coffee stand, to the sidewalk. And again, you know, my love dropped me off to figure out what the line's all about while he went and parked. This is in the north end, I believe, of Halifax, if I'm getting my directions right, which I think I am. So I asked someone with a dog that looks super friendly in line, like, how does this work? The two lines operated where you lined up at one of the two lines to make your order, and then you line up at the second line to pick up your order. I've never lined up to pick up my order before, but here we go. It was an experience. The coffee was great. I had a flat white. I trusted they could do a great flat white and not just a latte, and that was true. We had some baked goods. My love had a tea because he's not a coffee drinker. And it was by far the longest I ever waited to have coffee in my life made. The longest. I think I didn't time it. It had to be 20 minutes, maybe slightly more. I don't think I'm exaggerating. And I talked to the people next door that were sitting down at a table beside us because we were naughty and we didn't get in line. I was just waiting for my name to be called, as you do in the city. And yeah, they said, no, that's about right. But they're like, hands down, it's the best coffee in Halifax. It was great. I've never waited as long for coffee, so I'm glad it was great. That was Espresso 46. Always an interesting story going to the cafes. Moving into the yarn stores with the items that I purchased while away in Halifax. So part of the reason, as well as the necessity of grocery shopping going into Halifax, were the yarn shops. Halifax has a decent amount, I think, for the population that's there. And I had a couple that I was interested in. Two of my favorites are the ones that I purchased yarn from. The first shop, and let me just open up my little book because I made notes. I do not want to forget anything. My love dropped me off. He was a delight, as he always is, and actually took my computer. There was a situation that had happened with my computer, and so he brought it to the Apple store in Halifax pretty much for the chunk of the afternoon to mind it getting fixed and all the things that had to happen with the software, well, I yarn shopped. I walked from basically one end of the city, the north end, to almost the south end of the city that day, and had the best time. It was hot, but had the best time. So I took myself right after Espresso 46 and walked to Fia Fia. Fia Fia is a newer yarn shop that is in a house. It was in a completely residential area. I have my map with me on my phone, and I'm watching and I'm walking and enjoying the sights. The north end of Halifax is, you know, it's very Parkdale-esque of Toronto. It's a mix of residential, like hip cafes. It's interesting, lots going on. So walking up to Fia Fia, at first I thought I was in a completely wrong area. I'm looking for like storefronts. This was not. This was in a house. Fia Fia is owned by Juliana, and she's lovely. We had such a nice time chatting. So I walk up to the house. I do see the sign of Fia Fia. I walk in. Beautiful, you know, beautiful design of the yarn shop. It's fresh, it's minimal. It has, you know, very calm element. The environment of it is very calming, very monochromatic, you know, whites, light, like beechwood kind of color to really showcase and make the yarn pop, which I think that's the whole point. So this is her shop that she has in her house and lives above, which I thought, like, amazing. How cool is this? So Juliana talked about, we talked about knitting, of course, we talked about different yarn, and again, super knowledgeable about the products that she carries and the yarn she carries. Of course, this is her shop, so she's curating as she goes. Interested in local or close to Halifax yarns. She carries the Cape Breton yarn, which I was really interested in purchasing. I had a hard time actually deciding what I wanted to buy, and I ended up going with this. So this is a yarn that I completely would never really choose. Like, the colors, yes, they're super fun, but to get something this involved, usually I'm a one color girl. This skein spoke to me. So this is Alice Alishka yarn cake. I didn't find this on her website, so you might have to message her if you're interested. And this is I believe it's a DK weight. It's hand dyed merino, and it's 200 yards for 85 grams. Super light and gorgeous. It is a different mix of colors, and I'm sure it's coming up in camera. I'm sure you can see, of like pinks and oranges, that it looks like, you know, one strand was plied. I don't know. What am I talking about? Plied. I don't even know spinning. But like one section of yarn is pink, one's orange, and then they've spun them together to create this like wicked mix of yarn. This, I'm delighted to say that my plan with this is to create the Pressed Flowers pullover by Amy Christoffers. She's come out with that recently. I know she's come out with the Pressed Flowers socks as well, and she has a whole, you know, accoutrement of Pressed Flowers garments, and I'm just so excited to do something with this. I might have over purchased, I think, according to Ravelry sources, I think I could get away with 2 skeins. However, I thought, you know what, I'm here only now, and again, it's such a particular yarn that I got 3 just in case. I'd rather have a little extra than not enough. And I'm just gonna pair this with, like, this will be the flower part, the contrasting color, and I'll pair it with like a cream. And I think this is just going to like be a delight in the Pressed Flowers pullover. I don't know when I'm gonna start it, but I'm really excited for that. So thanks to Juliana. She also stocks a bunch of other items, of course, beautiful yarns and accessories. She had these very cool ceramic buttons that I was intrigued by to purchase, but I'm like, I'm not a cardigan knitter, so it didn't really make sense for me. But I loved it. I loved my time at Fia and chatting with her. So thank you to Juliana for that. My next adventure, I walked past the Citadel of Halifax. I didn't go into the Citadel, but I went up the hill to just look around and get a sight of the city. It's up on a hill. There's a clock tower. It's a beautiful spot, and it's a great view of the city. You can walk up the hill and get a little bit of extra steps and cardio on, which I did. And coming back down, I went into another yarn shop. This yarn shop is called The Loop, and it is in a much more touristy area of Halifax in the hustle bustle. I met Morgan. Morgan works at The Loop, and I think she was definitely my favorite human that I met while I was away. Morgan is full of passion and excitement, and she's so expressive that I could have stayed at The Loop and chatted with her all day. She, again, took me on a mini tour of the yarn shop, which I'm thrilled about, and was so much fun with her. She had a story for everything, and I love listening to her. She was just the best. Her sense of creative spin on everything, it was amazing. I hope I'm putting it into words properly, where I'm able to express my emotions around my meeting with her, because I feel like up until this point I've had such a lovely connection with other yarny people, knitters. With Morgan, there was such a big connection. Like, I just adored our time together, and it was great. The Loop, obviously heaps of yarn, again, familiar yarn to me, some completely new and local, of course, which was always my favorite. Local yarns that they had was the Fleece Artist or Artiste, I think. They had handmaiden yarn as well. They had cones that were interesting, and they actually sold the cones of yarn by weight, instead of like purchasing the whole cone, which I guess you could, but they actually take it off of the cone, weigh it, and then you can buy however much, where I thought, like, I've never heard of that. That's very cool. They have also, which again was really interesting and new to me, that they sold fleece by weight. So you can purchase the amounts that you need of colored fleece to, I guess, like felt width and stuff, but only the quantities you need, which again, like, how economical, how interesting, how cool. And then what I purchased. Okay. This is what I purchased. Kind of goes outside of knitting world, but I purchased a crochet kit. This is the I don't even know how to say it. Rico Rumi crochet kit. This is of a narwhal whale. Of course, it had a story from the delightful Morgan. I hope I get the story right, and I wish she was here to tell it, because she told it the best. Okay, so she had, I don't know if she crocheted this, but the shop had a crochet sample. And of course they had heaps of samples of all the knitting and goodness. They had a little narwhal whale that was like calling to me. Okay, I had to look up the story of the narwhal whale because I didn't want to get it wrong. Morgan told it from The Loop beautifully. I'm not going to do its justice, but here we go. So the narwhal whale sample at the shop they had, she said, was named Darren Frost. Of course, I didn't know who that was. I was informed. He is a hero who protected London Bridge from an attacker with a narwhal tusk. I mean, who knows this information? Morgan does. She loves royal family stories and all monarchy kinds of things, but how fabulous. So in contribution and memory of Morgan, I will be trying my hand at crochet with the narwhal whale, and maybe with my biggest heart going forward will be a Darren Frost #2. Fun. All right, I'm just perusing through, and I think that is it. So up until this point, the purchases that I have made, I don't think have been that bonkers. You're gonna think a little bonkers later, but we're doing okay for now. So with that, I obviously would love to thank all of the people that I met while in Nova Scotia, from the Loop, from Via, from all the magical places that we visited, from my time in Terrence Bay, at Prospect. I mean, I was hugged by a woman in Prospect that said I should move there. My heart, yes. I was cheered on by another woman doing a power walk in Lower Prospect as I was running up the hill. I cannot say enough beautiful things about these wonderful humans that I came across. My heart, and I think the need of finding humanity again and a sense of community. I'm overwhelmed to say that already in this portion of my time in Nova Scotia surpassed my expectations of what people still are. And yeah, down east, incredible time. So thank you to all those people. I also want to thank you for coming and showing up and watching up until now with the rant about yarn and my time away in Nova Scotia. So thank you. I do hope you make your way down east and get to enjoy some of the things that I was able to enjoy. Maybe you're going to enjoy new things outside of Peggy's Cove, Halifax, Terrence Bay, Prospect area. Enjoy some of the farmers markets. So thanks for coming today. And yes, if you have any questions, maybe I left something out about my finished objects that you're curious about, please let me know. Send a message on the comments, and we will see you again soon for a part 2 of Nova Scotia. I hope you find joy in your knitting today, whatever you're knitting on, and until next time, thank you.